Imagine waking up one day to discover that the people around you have stopped asking questions. You look around, and you realize that the world has become so loud, so fast, and so saturated with information that the human mind has dulled into a state of passive acceptance. The ability to reason, to challenge, and to reflect has been replaced by instant reactions and surface-level opinions. Think about the consequences of that shift. What happens to a civilization when critical thinking vanishes? What does the future look like when a society replaces deep inquiry with collective echo chambers? In this video, we are going to uncover the disturbing truth behind the rise of collective stupidity. This is a psychological phenomenon where masses of people adopt shallow thinking, blindly accept narratives, and surrender their intellectual independence without even realizing it. We are not just talking about a lack of education. We are talking about a systemic condition designed to keep us comfortably numb. By the end of this analysis, we will reveal the most urgent truth of all, one that determines whether you reclaim the sovereignty of your mind or lose it entirely to the noise. If you believe that truth is still worth seeking, then this message is for you. Let's begin with an uncomfortable truth. Thinking is hard. In our modern environment, deep contemplation is actively discouraged. Society rewards speed, emotional response, and conformity, not silence or depth. The philosopher Noam Chomsky warned us about this decades ago. He described the manufacturing of consent, explaining how power structures rely on a population trained to consume without questioning. When people agree without understanding, they become easy to manage and even easier to deceive. Today, critical thinking is often seen as an inconvenience because it slows down the cycle of outrage and challenges the group and oppos's ideology. But how did we get here? The primary driver is information overload. According to neuroscientist Daniel Levitin, the average person today processes 5 times more information daily than they did just a few decades ago. We are bombarded with notifications, ads, and breaking news every waking moment. The human brain was not built for this input. When the brain is overwhelmed, it shortcuts. It starts to rely on mental habits and cognitive biases to navigate complexity. Instead of evaluating ideas critically, we look for social proof. We see a post with thousands of likes and assume it must be true. This is not reason speaking. It is a psychological reflex. Furthermore, we are witnessing the decline of deep reading. Neuroscientist Marian Wolf describes how digital media is rewiring our brains to skim and scan rather than focus. But critical thinking requires sustained attention. If your attention span is fractured, you cannot analyze or reflect. We have created a society dependent on technology, yet hardly anyone thinks critically about the systems we depend on. To understand the roots of this decline, we must look at the systems that shape us. The erosion of thought begins early, specifically in our education system. John Taylor Gatto, an award-winning educator, argued that modern schooling was designed during the industrial age not to create independent thinkers, but to create obedient workers. The system teaches us what to think, not how to think. We are evaluated on our ability to memorize and regurgitate, not on the depth of our questions. Conformity is rewarded, while curiosity is often treated as a distraction. The lesson we learn is clear. Follow the rules and do not ask difficult questions. This conditioning intensifies in our digital lives. Social media has accelerated this problem to unimaginable levels. What was once a space for connection has become a battlefield of algorithmic manipulation. Every platform is designed to keep you scrolling by feeding you content that confirms your existing beliefs. You are encouraged to respond instantly and emotionally. The algorithms reward anger and division, not understanding. In this noise, the voice of reason is drowned out. Philosopher Marshall McLuhan foresaw this when he said, "The medium is the message." The way we receive information changes how we think. Today's medium encourages speed over depth and certainty over humility. In the age of misinformation, truth has become less important than virality. People no longer evaluate the merit of ideas based on logic. They judge them based on how many people agree. This is the tyranny of the majority. In its most dangerous form, cognitive tyranny. We have outsourced our thinking to machines and public opinion. leaving our own minds atrophied. However, the deepest reason for the disappearance of critical thinking lies within the human psyche itself. Despite our faith in logic, the human brain is far more emotional than it is rational. Nobel Prize winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman showed that our brains operate using two systems. System 1 is fast, instinctive, and emotional. System 2 is slow, deliberate, and analytical. In our high speed world, most people are permanently stuck in System 1. We rely on heuristics because we simply do not have the energy to slow down and think. Politicians and marketers exploit this by packaging complex issues into simple binaries. They use emotionally charged language to bypass our reason. Once we accept a narrative, we fall into the trap of, and quote, confirmation bias, and quote. We defend our beliefs regardless of the evidence because being wrong feels like a threat to our identity. This leads to, end quote, groupthink, end quote, a phenomenon where the desire for social harmony leads to irrational decisions. Psychologist Irving Janis found that even intelligent people will suppress their own doubts to avoid being ostracized by the group. Why do we do this? Because challenging the tribe feels unsafe. As psychologist Eric Fromm explained in Escape from Freedom, many people secretly want to surrender their freedom of thought because true freedom comes with responsibility. Thinking for yourself means you can no longer blame others for your ignorance. You must face the uncertainty of truth alone. For many, that burden is too heavy, so they choose the comfort of collective stupidity over the danger of individual thought. So, how do we resist this tide? The answer lies in cultivating awareness and courage. We must begin by practicing, and quote, metacognition, and quote, the ability to think about our thinking. You must become an observer of your own mind. When you feel a strong reaction to a headline, pause. Ask yourself, and quote, what is influencing my opinion right now? Am I reacting to facts, or am I reacting to emotional manipulation? Am I open to being wrong? End quote. We must also recover, end quote, intellectual humility, end quote. Socrates, the father of critical thinking, famously said, end quote, the only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing, end quote. This was not self-deprecation, it was an invitation to stay curious. In a culture that worships arrogance, we must be brave enough to say, end quote, I don and oppose. Tino, but I am willing to learn, end quote. Another powerful tool is, end quote, dialectical thinking, end quote. This is the ability to hold two opposing ideas in tension while exploring them. It allows you to move beyond the simple binaries of, end quote, us versus them, end quote, and enter the realm where real understanding is born. Finally, understand that critical thinking is a spiritual act. It is the act of honoring truth over comfort. You must learn to detach your identity from your beliefs. You are not your political party. You are not your ideology. You are a human being with the capacity to evolve. As Carl Jung said, end quote, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls, end quote. But facing your inner world, your biases, your fears, your motives, is the essence of thinking. When you reclaim your mind, you become harder to manipulate. You begin to see through the illusions of propaganda. The world needs this now more than ever. We do not need louder voices. We need deeper minds. We need people willing to sit in complexity. If you want to change the world, start by changing the way you think. Not because it is easy, but because it is right. The revolution begins when one person chooses to think clearly in a world that does not. Let that person be you. Stay curious. Stay awake. And above all, keep thinking.